Yeah. All right. Well, we're just gonna go ahead and go into it so that Ryan can go continue to eat chicken in his head. Cut off. All right. So, all right. What did we say last time? Did we say welcome back? Did we say into the Lion's Den? Oh, we're so happy that you're here.
You can do all of those combined.
All right, folks. Welcome back to Into the Lion's Den with your hosts Ryan Karras and Christian Griffith. Brought to you by Pride Roofing and Construction. Today we're going to be going straight back into the last topic. We're making it through a book. We're exercising our brains a little bit, hopefully encouraging you to do the same. But back to 13 fatal errors managers can make and how you can avoid making it or making them. 13 fatal errors managers can make and how you can avoid them. I don't know why. This is the longest title of all time, but it's a great book. So we've already crossed off 4 of the fatal errors. Today we're going to go into 5 and 6. Is that correct?
Yes.
5 and 6. So today we're going to be talking about managing everybody the same way and forgetting about the importance of profit. So spin it over to my guy over here. Lay it on us, king. Just kidding. Let's just throw some Gen Z stuff in there.
Yeah. So
got the Riz today with that blue
you
shirt.
got some serious Riz going on. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
I saw just off subject for a minute. I saw a table of Gen Z terms and normal people terms yesterday. Like 70% of this list, to me, looks like made up words. Like I'm like, what does this even mean?
Adeline, my daughter or stepdaughter, she's always saying Giat. And I'm like, don't say the Lord's name in vain. She's like, I didn't. And she's like, it's Giat. And I was like,
What does that mean?
evidently it means big ass. So
Giat?
Giat.
Giat.
And so you're like, oh my big ass.
It seems so much harder than just saying big ass.
Yeah, right.
It's Giat. Where does that come from? Who knows?
I don't-
Anyway, so on the subject of big asses, so no, I think that this one may be one of my favorite in the sense of I think it's one of the most common things that we see a lot of managers do incorrectly. Lacking emotional intelligence, I think, is what really drives somebody who can manage people differently based on how well they receive management and what style and how they communicate, what their personality type is, what motivates them, etc. But whenever I think of managing everyone the same way, the only thing that pops into my head is the movie Office Space. Right?
Yeah.
And
Need you to come in on Saturday.
Yeah, need you to come in on Saturday. And what about my stapler? But I guess for me, I just think of like that very dry, bland corporate dynamic of like, you're a cog in the wheel, company that has 30,000 employees. You're genuinely just a number to them and you're extremely replaceable. I think I never worked in any, but I know people that have like call centers, right? Same thing. But I think that one of and I brought this up earlier not in this series, but in a different video that we shot of one of my coaches growing up was very intense, and he was very what you would imagine like the typical over aggressive high school football coach type guy, right? That his way of coaching was screaming and yelling at people and belittling them and telling them that they sucked and that he won state 20 years ago and he was so much better. And I remember I had a conversation with him one day and I was like, I said, if you want me to perform, you can't coach me like this, right? All you're doing is killing my performance because I go out to perform or do what's expected of me and I'm unmotivated. I feel like shit. I feel like I don't match up to anything compared to anybody next to me. I said, I really only respond well to affirmation in a sense, or noticing the things that I'm doing correctly, and then maybe gently approaching me with the things I could improve upon.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he looked at me just utterly puzzled. Like, how do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's almost like, almost as if there was a little bit of judgment behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should just fit into my mold, right?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. There's obviously something wrong with you, boy. But I think that it's actually something that I do with every employee under me that starts here. Is I ask them the week after their classroom training, I ask them specifically, in what ways do you think that you get managed the best?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you need consistent communication? Do you need space? Do you need, somebody to riz you up? Do you respond well to negative feedback, constructive criticism? Do you respond well to the proverbial shit sandwich, which is, a compliment, a criticism, a compliment, right? And it's funny because even some of the few people here work so closely together and need management in literally the opposite way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you think of young Chris,
Mm-hmm.
right, versus old Chris. They could not be more opposite,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to be responded to and spoken to in opposite ways. And what I see a lot of times, management that's done in a one-size-fits-all way is one of the fastest ways, in my opinion, to lose talented people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and one of the things, not to cut you off, but one of the things they talk about in the book, one of the only parts I actually got to read before we started. I have read this book multiple times this time, but as a refresher. But one of the things they talk about is a lot of larger organizations fall into a bureaucratic management style,
Right.
which essentially is more about process and procedure as the only focus that you talk about, and serves its place, right? And then I have a reason for talking about this with the Chris and Chris scenario there, but it's bureaucratic management serves its purpose to run an efficient organization, but it has no purpose when it goes to encouraging the growth of the individuals within
Right.
said space.
Right.
Right. And so what I've noticed, actually, it's funny, we were talking about this with you, two things that I've done this week that I don't think you liked as much because I was going very bureaucratic, which were poking and prodding at principal pieces of procedural stuff. Right. And what I failed to do each time I did that was acknowledge the important things that have been the directives that were given to you and how good you've been doing in those ones, because I was only focused on the irritating piece that I had. So like in the position I sit in, as this company, I serve as the CEO. I don't even really like titles, but that's what I do. I kind of just control the heads, and then I also have dual purpose of selling and whatever else. But either way, it's like I have to look at those things, because if the procedure and the bureaucratic steps to get to places they fail, then the whole leg falls apart.
Right.
That's where the majority of my problems come from, as I mentioned in the last conversation. The puzzles that I deal with 20 to 40% of my day, depending on if it's a good day or a bad day, all boil down to procedural errors.
Right.
But I get numb to it and I forget, and all of a sudden all I'm talking about with everybody is the bureaucratic steps and all of the paper pushing efficiencies that I know are the true key to us being effective.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm forgetting about the person that I'm talking to as I'm doing it, right? So it's not that I'm just acknowledging, I guess, some humility here. It's not something that you can just, it's not going to come naturally to anybody that's watching this video. The tailor fit, like, you ever heard of smell blind?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's people who put too much cologne on because their senses stop remembering that they have it on, right? Because it's heavy duty. I mean, did you know that cologne's made out of whale's piss?
Yeah.
And blubber and other things like that? I didn't know that. But anyways, so like that smell becomes something that their senses ignore on purpose because it's so pungent.
Right.
Other people who are introduced to it, their senses have not ignored it at this point. So they just keep spraying it on themselves. And everybody else is like, damn, this dude freaking stinks.
Yeah.
Right? He does the opposite of what he wants. But that's kind of the thing that happens in management a lot of times is you fall into these categories of let me repeat the same thing over and over like it's a one-size-fit-all when we're talking about the efficiencies and we forget about the person. And so when you're talking, and the reason I brought it up with Chris and Little Chris, I don't know their P's and Q's. I know
Right.
Chris, Big Chris well. I don't know little Chris as well. But I know that their tenure in their professional life is split apart by about 30 years.
Right.
And you've got Captain Riz on one side and Captain I already been there, done that on this side, right? So like, how do we appease both of those? Well, if you've ever gotten to one size fit all in anything you've ever bought, chances are it's not that comfortable. It's just kind of good enough,
Right.
you know? So
Well, I mean, I think that, and I do firmly believe and agree with you that for any successful business, process comes before profit. It has to, right? Because you can't overextend process like you can overextend profit, right? It's like if you can get all of the processes, all the procedures, everything perfect, or as perfect as you can, right? That's, in my opinion, the definition of a sustainable business, right? A business that maybe has tremendous profit, right? But no processes is a short-lived business, right?
it's lucky you nailed a niche that needed you for the time being until everybody catches up.
Right. And the person that's going to catch up and then beat you is the one that has systemized things, right?
And that's, I mean, you and I talked about that, not in extreme length yesterday, but my thought process towards expansion as an organization is very different than my ex-business partner.
Right.
And it's directly to this particular conversation. He wanted to take over the world and he wanted to do it fast.
Right.
But in order to do that, he would have to make a million different, business transactions, shave off points, give those to people, have them run, small variants of the organization all over the country, and then
Right.
just hope that it fit.
Yeah.
I know for certain that we've never had the perfect, stable foundation to work off of. So it's
Right.
like every one of those units, they might be producing money, but they're going to be hemorrhaging just as much or more every single month because the inefficiencies are in place. There's no efficiencies in place. It's the opposite. So I always focus on driving this stuff into everybody for months and months and months now. It's like procedure. But then I also forget,
Right.
okay, let's empathize with some of the people because as they probably are tired of hearing, you screwed up on this process and not hearing, hey, buddy, good job on the sale or
Right.
good productivity or whatever it is, so.
Well, I think that, the most expensive portion of building a home is the foundation,
That's the most important part.
right? So Alex had a really good metaphor the other day when he was talking about building business, and he was using cardboard boxes, right? And he was like, I could build this stack of 12 by 12 boxes, 15 boxes high, right? But if I tap it, it falls. So I can create great profit very quickly, right? With no foundation, right? And it crumbles. Eventually, it will, right? And he said, if I take those 12 boxes and instead of stacking them vertically, stack them horizontally around each other, and then build up from there. He said, how much harder is it going to be to knock over this whole stack of boxes? It's going to be almost impossible.
Might be able to knock out one or two
Right.
of them on the edges.
Right.
Like a pyramid.
Yeah.
You take one out, but the rest of it's still
Right.
standing as opposed to a...
It's funny, there was a little lesson there for my daughter the other day building Legos. She was like, because the first in any kit you get, you build the ground up, right? And she's like, oh, this is boring. She's like, all the pieces are gray. And I was like, yeah, well, that's the base. And she was like, well, I want all the colorful pieces. And I was like, you'll get there, right? But without the base, how is this lighthouse going to stand up?
I always drive Gabe crazy when we're building Lego houses and blocks and stuff because I'll use more than half of them to build just the foundation. He's like, we got to get it so tall. There's no way this is going to work. And I'm like, it'll stay up if we do it this way, you know?
Yeah. So it, like, I look at like one of the, being that, you know, there's a large sales component to this business. On my leg of the business is, you know, running basically everything inward, right? Is like, one of the things that I have to do is, with multiple different people, slow them down without demotivating them to build them up, all in individual ways, right? You know, everybody is always in a position where they're like, I want to make more money yesterday, right? It's like, I get it, right? But do we want a solid foundation that we can keep building off of? Or do we just want, you know, quick sale here, quick sale here, quick sale here, right? So it's kind of like, I look at a lot of, especially people when they start, I look at them like seeds that I just planted in the ground. And in my head, oftentimes people are like, if we look at it like corn, right? They're like, I want to, you know, I want to be a 6 foot tall, 8 foot tall corn stalk, right? And I'm like, dude, you haven't even sprouted out of the ground yet, right? Like your seed may be just sprouted, but I don't even see you, right? So
you might have came from a championship winning seed progeny, but you just got put in the ground,
right?
So let's, you know, let's make sure our ground has the right nutrients in it. Let's make sure it's watered, you know, stuff. So, but yeah, when it comes to managing everybody the same way, there's some extreme negative consequences, and a lot of that is the lack of your ability to build the foundation, like we've been talking about. I think the through line, like just the same as the last videos that we put out, is it leads to the inability of the company and individuals within the company to grow. Right. So, and then it obviously undermines morale, leads to turnover, and so on and so forth. If you got just the guy barking orders at everybody, 2 people might like it because they grew up in that environment. Right. Whereas the other 8 are going to fail. Well,
and you can tangibly feel, I genuinely think that you can, usually within the first few days, you can tangibly feel what it's like working for somebody or under somebody's management who understands that versus somebody who doesn't, right? And it's like, it's a very fast, at least for me, and maybe this may just be the emotional intelligence part or whatever it is, but like, I can usually tell within a day or two if I'm like, I'm not going to mesh with this person because they see things only from their perspective, only their way, and only want things done their way. And that's not going to breed success, right? So it's like the practice of saying, like we talked about in the first one, which is, you know, recognizing or taking ownership for your own faults or the team's fault, right? Is the ability to just say like, I don't know, right? Or what is be inquisitive, adult learning, right? What is the best way to get the most productivity out of you? What do you need from me, right? And then sticking to that, right? Which is hard.
It is difficult. And then there's other failures that they talk about in the book, and I think that a lot of people fall into those categories, which is like trying to manage the team as a whole instead of doing one-on-ones. Like the team management atmosphere should be more about, here are the focal points of the organization and spreading vision, and here are the goals that we as a unit can unify around and work towards. But then the individuals, when we get to the nitty-gritty and we start to tailor fit what we're going to do with them and how we're going to communicate with them, figure out what those energy drivers or incentives are that they want, because chances are it's not going to be the same from 1 through 100. Every one of them is going to be different, and you got to have a good head on your shoulders as a manager to understand what the different energy driver is out of this person too. You know?
It's funny, one of our guys the other day, I asked him, I said, you know, like what is your most solid motivating factor? Like, what's your why? And his response was so different than what I thought, right? I was like, I think I got this guy kind of pinned down. And he says, well, the only way that I'm going to attract a 10 is if I make a lot of money. And I was like, you mean like a woman?
Mhm.
And he goes, yeah. And I was like, okay, so that's your motivator? He goes, the only way that I'll find a high value woman is if I am a high value man. And I was like, okay.
I love it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, I get that.
Yeah.
Right? Let's work towards there.
Well, we'll spin this off, and I know that we got to make this one a little shorter than the other videos so that people actually pay attention. But this is a funny story. When I first got into management, like I said in other videos, I was kind of shoved into it. I didn't believe that I was the right person for it. My leader thought that I was the right person for
Right.
it. So it took a lot of sanding off rough edges and stuff like that for me, and also getting past the insecurities and whatnot. But I remember one of my first wins as a manager when I figured out how to tailor fit something to somebody was, we're just going to call the guy Ricky. I'm not going to say his last name so that if he ever does watch it, he doesn't feel.
Is his real name Ricky?
His real name is Ricky. I'm not going to say his last
Call
name.
him Ronald.
Right. But anyways, Ricky was a terrible salesman. Awful. I don't know how, because I wasn't at the time the person who hired people. I just took them and whatever. I don't know how he passed through, the filtration process to get him. He was awful. He'd turn bright red, almost like blue, talking to people. He'd stare at his feet. He'd start sweating. He'd shuffle around. He'd stop what he was saying, walk straight out of the door if he didn't say things right, stuff like that. Like he was bad, right? And I remember driving back from one of our appointments, and I was like, Ricky, yeah, I was like, why do you want to be a salesman? And he goes, I don't know, I just heard that it's a job that you can make a lot of money doing. And I was like, okay, but why do you want to be a salesman? He's like, honestly, I just don't know what else I want to do. I was like, okay.
Okay.
So tell me something you do want.
Right.
And he goes, well, this is a little bit weird, but I've never had a girlfriend before, and I'd really like to have a girlfriend. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, we could work with that.
Yeah.
And I was like, Ricky, tell me about high school. Who got the chicks in high school? And he goes, the assholes. and I was like, so yeah, you thought they were assholes, but what was the piece about them that made them so that even though they were assholes, the girls still got with them? Right? And he goes, I don't know, their confidence. Exactly, buddy. And I was exactly, as a salesperson, you have to learn to be confident in yourself. A great salesperson is confident in themselves first and their product second. And when they get both of those two things, they're dynamite, right? And I was like, so let's work towards this. And I said, every one of these interactions, let's just pretend that if you start to master this communication, right? You master communication, that you're going to be able to be interviewed by a woman and get the job.
Right.
And from that day forward, dude played it like it was practice every single day. He's just like, got it. Crazy part about this guy, he's married, has 3 kids. He also is one of the most profitable motorcycle salespeople in Northern Colorado.
Nice.
And he started as the worst salesman I ever met.
Nice.
Right. Not to say that was me, but he figured out the why, and that was because I tailor fit what we were talking about to his objective. Right. So pretty cool story. But
Well, it's just digging, right? It's finding, it's Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, right? It's one of my favorite books ever. And it's like, if you can keep digging, we should be good on time. I got what I needed to be done covered. So,
oh, nice.
Cool, great.
yeah. So, but it's like, it's one of my favorite conversations to have with people because I just get to keep digging. They're like, well, I just want to be financially successful. I'm like, why? What does that mean to you? What does financial success mean to you? Right? Like, I don't really know. I don't have to worry about bills. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean to you? That you don't have to worry about bills? Freedom? Right? Less stress? What does that mean? It's just, I mean, I like it because a lot of people don't initially take that incentive on their own to really dig, right? To be like, what is my why? And I think that if you can find out somebody's why or what their real purpose of why they accepted the position and or do what they do, right, is usually the golden key to the doorway of how to manage them, right? Like this is, like the guy here who told me, he was like, I want to attract a high value woman. I was like, okay, I understand that, right? You know, and what does that mean to you,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, so you want somebody on your arm that you're proud of? He goes, yeah. And I said, you know, so does that increase your sense of pride? He goes, yeah. I said, what if we start with yours? Like your self-worth, your self-esteem, your pride. He was like, that's a good idea. I was like, yeah. Yeah.
Damn right it is.
Yeah.
I'm like
So,
Yoda.
yeah. So I was like, you know, I get that, but it's going to be, and I told him, I said, you can attract a high value woman, right? And being financially successful or stable is a good starting point. But we got to figure out what's inside you to make you attracted to that woman as well. It's not just money, despite what movies and social and you know whatever the news and social media put out there. But it was just a funny conversation because it totally caught me off guard. I was going. My assumption was way off base.
Well, you can have a really powerful influence over the people that you're working with too, because sometimes you find that their goals and their why factors are a little bit superficial, and they can be much more grounded by getting to know them,
Right.
and that kind of stuff. That's one of my favorite parts. Actually, I was watching a video. I was trying to get some, some fuel for our conversation. I was watching different people's spin-off videos on YouTube of 13 Fatal Errors or errors bosses make and stuff like that. And one lady, it was really what she said was really powerful. She said that it is a gift to be put in a position where you're leading people.
It is.
And she said, it's something to this effect of don't squander it, right? Because it's just work, right? Everybody has to have a job to sustain a life and all those types of things, but you can actually assist people in changing their trajectory towards a much higher plane than they were headed if you take your job seriously.
Right.
So that's why.
Is it work or is it? I mean, it's something that's equally as important to both of us. But I think is influence, right?
Yep.
It's like I have a sense of responsibility to try to influence these people the best way I possibly can.
Yep.
Right.
It's our duty.
Yeah.
It's like you're elected because you have some form of character that your bosses say it fits.
Right.
Right. Use it wisely.
Right.
Right. So.
All right. Or I guess sixth, but second for today. So forgetting the importance of profit.
Yeah. This one I got a lot of. I'm smiling, but I'm thinking about all of the different things that irritate the piss out of me. Well, to dive into this one head first, our salespeople utilize this information sometimes when they're pitching, homeowners, because we always, Pride Roofing Construction, we take a stance when it comes to the way that we present sales, which is that we will never trash talk an entity or a person in order to earn business. It's a really low level of character or somebody who has to drag somebody down in order to earn business. Yeah. So when we're referencing here is like we're not going to sit out there and talk to a homeowner about how bad of a person the insurance company is and then pit them against them and say we're the only ones that can help you. It's complete asinine. You can help yourself. You learn how to do all this stuff. You can get through the process. We can make it easier. And there are other people just like us who can get it done as well, right? But we're not going to pit ourselves in that position when we talk smack about the insurance company. But what we have to get our clients to acknowledge is that the insurance company is a for-profit business, and we are also a for-profit business, right? You have a need. They have a resource. We have the solution, right? We work as a trifecta. Right. And when we talk about that, we have to equalize our stature with our clients. We have to say things like, I'm the expert. Or you don't have to say I'm the expert, but you have to get them to understand you are the expert and you're the one that's going to assist them through to the solution. They're going to be funding the solution. They're the ones that are going to acknowledge and, approve and so on and so forth. But what ends up happening a lot of the times is our guys will start to get a little bit stressed about the, trying to appease every will, want, whatever the terminology is of the client. And they forget that they still have to serve a purpose of generating profit for the organization. They can't just keep chipping out all of these points, because at the end of the day, if you're doing work for nothing, or if you're doing work for less than nothing and paying these clients to get it done, how are you supposed to maintain your job because there's no money for your payroll,
Right.
and two, continue to elevate an organization at the same time and grow it so that we can have more of an expansive
Right.
reach? We talked about a long time ago conscious capitalism. I believe in conscious capitalism, where we focus on the stakeholder, i.e. the employee and the client that we're working on, rather than my personal interest as a stockholder. If we focus our decisions based off of that, our growth will be so expansive that the profit will still be generated. Right? And so I went on a long tangent with all this stuff, but it's important that when you're managing people with an organization, you still keep profit in mind, because if you don't keep profit in mind and you start to question your costs on jobs that you do, or bend over every chance that you can for your client just to win a deal, it's not even worth doing the business in the first place, right? Somebody who stands up and says, no, I'm worth this much and here's why, and they appreciate that because they're worth what they were worth at business, and that's why they accepted their job or whatever they're doing, and you agree on this, you can move forward and both parties are happy because you can finish what you need to do and grow this organization, and these people get their service taken care of. Right? It's simple. Right.
It's funny you bring up the perception of, that we don't want to pit ourselves against insurance. I had a homeowner early last week, and one of our newer guys was a little bit stumped at their response, and he was like, I don't necessarily want you guys to make money off of my insurance company. Right? And he was like, how do I approach that? And I was like, well, I mean, we can go have a conversation with him. I'll talk to him about it, right? And it really, and this is, for me, this is just sales in general, but really, I think that any objection like that is just a lack of information, right? They just don't fully understand the process, and or they don't fully understand how we work with insurance, vice versa, right? And I asked the guy just a few simple questions. His insurance carrier was the big red one. And I said, so, and I just read this a couple weeks ago, right before that. I nerded out on some insurance revenue numbers from 2023. And I said, I totally understand your perception here, right? But insurance has already, let's say they buy the roof, they buy the project, whatever. Insurance has already agreed to pay us, right? That's factored into their pricing, right? So they agree that our work is of value to get your house back up to pre-storm condition, right? I said, what puzzles me about your question is that you don't want your funds from insurance, so technically insurance's funds, to go into our local economy, but you want it to go towards Super Bowl commercials and $250,000 prize winnings for cooking shows, and because that's what happens, right? And I said, if we look at this from a broad spectrum, I said last year, this one company specifically recorded $13.7 billion in profits with a B, right? So how long have you been paying said company, right? And have you ever asked or received or made a claim or exchanged funds with them ever? And he was like, no. And I said, okay, so if we just break this down on their margins, right? You've paid them X amount, they've profited X amount off of your money, right? And it's their duty to cover this loss. That's why you pay them, right? And I said, and what you do when they pay us to do the work is that money goes into the local economy, right? Not Super Bowl commercials and prize pots for cooking shows and, whatever else, right? And he was like, oh, I've never thought of it like that. And I was like, right. So yes, we will make money on this because we're a business, right? But whatever you do for your work makes money, I would assume as well, because it's a business or you own a business, whatever it is. And the only way for us to survive is to make money, right? So I don't think that making money or making profit off of a claim or making profit off of work that needs to be done to protect your house is necessarily bad. Wouldn't you agree? And he goes, now I do. I was like, right.
Yeah. Well,
Right, and the account manager said to me, he said, he said, not one time did you say something bad about the insurance company. And I said, I don't have anything bad to say about them.
well, you think about it from a different, more pulled back perspective. The insurance company is for profit as well.
Right.
They don't just exist to protect you. They do. They serve that purpose when you need them.
Right.
But they are also a business. Think about how many employees are paid through them and how many mouths are fed through them. I mean, they're doing justice to the world. They're providing jobs. I mean, that's what the president's job is to do, is increase the amount of jobs that are out there.
Right.
That's what a business owner's job is too. So when we look at the insurance company as a good business and we present ourselves as a good business, we're going to operate in that same form and fashion. They're going to profit because they're a for-profit business.
Right.
We are going to profit because we're a for-profit business.
Right.
And all the while, all that you as a client need to do is understand we are serving a purpose to fix your problem.
Right.
Well, now what else needs to be said from there?
Right.
If you do it with ethics, you do it with good quality, you do it all the ways you're supposed to. They've already set the price point. I don't get to set the price point. The insurance sets the price point, and I find ways to get it done within their margin. Right. So, but
bring up your. We take care of our people here.
Sure.
Story.
So, so I had a representative who worked out of our Cheyenne branch, and he sold a lemon of a job. We'll call it a lemon of a job. So the price point that was estimated for him, he took it upon himself to cut that price point down by almost half of what it was given to him. So it was at a point where he had an estimator deliver it to him. And then he took it upon himself to discount it by almost half because he felt that the price was too high, right? Somehow this gets through our filtration system. We build the job and we look at its profit analysis, the job costing, right? And by the time this is over, we lost. So like when I say we lost, what that means is I paid $10,000 to put this roof on this person's house. They didn't pay us anything by that point. I paid more. Right? I mean, they did pay us a transaction money. There's, so on and so forth. But what I'm saying is I ended up donating $10,000 to their cause. Right. And I said, why on earth did you make this decision knowing full well what our price was supposed to be? And he goes, around here, we take care of each other. And I was like, so are you going to pay me back the $10,000 that you just lost? That came out of my pocket, not yours, by this decision.
Gave away.
Right. And he goes, why would I do that? And I was like, why would I have to pay the $10,000 to this person to do their roof for them? Right. So you just volunteered me for that. So I get his perspective. Right. That's the thing. Like I get his perspective. Let's take care of our people. Right. So like if you have a job where it's not insurance related, it's retail, and this person's house is leaking and it's going to cause mold and they've got kids and they got all these things, I'm not going to drive the highest margin I can get out of that job.
Right.
I'm going to use my human side and say, how many things can I do to make this less of a burden to you?
Right.
But if we get to a point where I can't go any lower and you also just can't cover it, and we can't find a funding method that's outside of us, like loans and other things, I'm just going to say, unfortunately, I can't do it. There might be somebody who can, but I cannot do it. I'm just going to be honest at that point, right? But I'm not going to jeopardize the company's ability to stay open because it's my duty as an owner of an organization to make sure we do profit so that all of the mouths that are associated with the payroll that comes with this organization continue to be fed.
Right.
Right. We're not going to do work for free or for negative, and that's not a bad thing to say.
Right.
If we're a nonprofit business, then if we're doing business that's shady, that is a bad thing to say because your job is to get funding and sponsorships and this and that. But at the same time, those people who work for nonprofit businesses aren't doing it for free. No. They collect a paycheck, and sometimes it's a pretty darn heavy paycheck also.
Most 501c3s CEOs have some pretty audacious paychecks.
That's what I'm saying. So like the world of commerce it's that's the way that it is. So when people take it upon themselves, and it's not just that, and the reason they talk about it in 13 fatal errors is like when a manager forgets about profit as they're making decisions, they're going to allocate the company's resources towards poor endeavors. They're going to send their team members to do X when they should be doing Y. They're going to make poor judgment calls for the quick sale, ultimately forgetting about the fact that it's not at a margin that's going to be viable for the organization to sustain business if it continues that way, so on and so forth. And so what it does is ultimately limits the ability for that manager to work with people, because what happens if you go net negative as a business? You have to start making changes. You have to, unfortunately, cut back on payroll. You have to cut back on the things that you're investing in, and you have to basically start over from more of a zombie protocol at that point. And you're usually it's a death by 1,000 cuts, but most of those cuts were at the hands of the managers.
Well, I think that it's, I had a very difficult time with this when I started my first gym when I was 21, right? Because I genuinely just wanted to help everybody. So I remember vividly, I ran this special, and it was like there was a 2-week window where you could sign up at my gym for $30 a month, and that's what your going rate would be, right? And I had, I think, 63 people sign up. Now, bear in mind, at this time, my gym is 1,800 square feet, right? Tiny.
Yeah.
Then there's one employee, me, right? And my membership base went from like 30 to 96. Right? And then I was like, oh shit. I just screwed up. Because now I'm 5 times busier and 3 times poorer. Right? And I was like, this doesn't seem to make sense. So I would say a couple years later, I started to really kind of comprehend, like, it's okay to charge people money for things. In fact, most people that value things are willing to pay for them.
Yeah.
Right? And most people that value the importance of something are actually willing to pay a premium for them. But it cuts into the same conversation that we have a lot of times when we go up or bid against other companies, and they come in 20% lower than us. And we're like, how do you function? Like, how is this business in business? Right? And I think that they've cut every possible corner they can cut. Right?
Generally, if you could boil it down, that's where you find the most of it is purposefully leaving out things that are unexpected, but also expected. Like you can't see it from the surface. In construction, there's tales of things you're going to find under the surface, but you can't prove it. So they're going to come in at a low number on purpose.
Right.
So they get the job and then hit you with change orders.
Right.
As a business owner, I think that change orders are the worst thing. Like there are certain times where change order is absolutely necessary, but most of the time that should have been conversed about well before you went into business with this person.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think these things could happen. So if they do, here's a square foot cost of what it's going to be if we have to tackle it. Are you okay with that? Yeah, because then we're agreeing. But if you just leave it off, right? And you're like, well, and it was an estimate. Sorry, now it's $100,000 more.
Yeah.
How do you continue to do business with that black mark?
Right.
And that perspective and whatever. And then the other businesses, when you really evaluate it, so that's probably 90% when you're looking at that. There's 10% of them that truly can hit that number because they have found all of the efficiencies that I'm currently striving to find, or we're currently trying to strive for.
Right.
So it's like, I can't compete with that one because they are doing it better right now.
And they're usually 2 decades ahead.
They are. They're very far into the future. They're 10, 20, 30 years more advanced. So if we can get there, we'll eventually be able to match that. Until that point, we still have the number that we got to hit, because if we don't hit that number, we don't exist.
Right.
And so, and I've also used this analogy. I think it's pretty useful for the clients that have still made it. Thank you for whoever's still watching. But, when you buy Nike shoes, right? Have you ever walked up to the counter and said, how much does it cost to build this Nike shoe? Right? Give me the itemized list of all of the things and the expenses that it took to manufacture this, get all the pieces together, get it whittled together, put it in a box and ship it here. Tell me, right? No, it's $120 and you either buy it or you don't.
Right.
Right. So it's like something is worth worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. Right. So sometimes people go overboard with that conversation. I agree with that wholeheartedly. There are people who gouge clients constantly.
Right.
And they somehow sell them into paying double what they should have paid for it. I know that's my stance is to never be there. I want it to be an honest assessment. Here's my best number that I can give you, and here's why that number exists the way it does. Right. And if you can have that conversation with a contractor and your managers know how to have that conversation, they're well equipped for it, your business can run effectively. You know when you're going to qualify your accounts by the ones who are going to absolutely squeeze you for everything that you've got, and you're going to get rid of them. And then you're going to work with the people who realize that you have leveled the playing field. We have the solution. You have the problem.
Right.
Let's engage.
Yeah.
Right.
It just reminds me of we have a job here that I vehemently encouraged one of our sales guys to not take on 2.5 years ago.
I myself as well. And I'm currently dealing with it.
Yeah, 2.5 years later.
I'm currently dealing with it. Yeah.
But he was thinking from in my opinion, a selfish perspective and not a company perspective.
I think it was a mixture of that, plus the fact that it was a time of the year where sales are sparse.
Right.
Right. So managers who don't understand like how negative of an impact that the opportunity cost lost in a problem account is going to quantify to be, they're not equipped to have that understanding or allow those things to happen more often than they should.
Yep.
So if you got somebody who's spending 90% of their time with one client because they're a problem client, they're losing 90% of opportunity. Managers need to help their guys qualify that, right? And so, we both gave him the do not touch it. He still touched it, and here we are,
But I mean, that it's just mature thinking, I guess you'd say, more long-term thinking, 30,000-foot view thinking. But I mean, right before we started filming today, it was a very similar situation, right? I was out at a place with one of our sales guys that would have been a 6-figure job, right? And, he's obviously super excited, right, that he gets the opportunity. The roof was too steep for him to climb. So I was up there. I spent 45 minutes up there really trying to get this job. And dramatically risking my life. Safely. But, and I got down and then I was walking around the exterior, et cetera. And I talked to the homeowner and the first words out of my mouth were, if this were my house, I would not file a claim. And you could see the sales guy just go. And I was like, but there was a healthy amount of wind damage. There was hail damage, but it was old, right? And it was clearly old, like very grayed out. I knew his carrier, and I was like, I said, if we push this through, it's going to be a 6 to 8 month battle with a 50% chance, maybe, right? And I think from a lot of our sales guys, especially when they're new, are thinking about like right now. And I was like, I said, here's the good thing that we did here is that we've established a relationship that's built on trust, right? So I told the guy, I said, next time a storm comes through, the first phone call I need you to make is to this guy, right? We'll come right back out. It'll be new damage. It'll be easy to document, right? And then I'll give you an assessment after that of what we should do, right? And the homeowner's exact words to me and this other gentleman were like, I appreciate you guys being so transparent, because there was a couple other people that came and looked in the last 6 months and said, you should definitely do something with this roof. We could get it bought, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, I mean, maybe they're more confident than me, but I've worked a lot of these that are like this, and I know that just due to the sheer size, it's going to be about, right? And, but that's like the understanding the long-term versus the short-term.
All I was really saying was you don't realize how much of a profit-focused decision it is to not take that job right now.
Right.
Because if you do, think about it, in a neighborhood like this, right? $100,000 roof, that's a big property.
Big property.
A huge property. And it's probably either a gated community or a very tight-knit community.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody there communicates and barbecues and does this and whatever, right? And so, you know, they're probably close to retired, if not retired.
Right.
They probably spend a lot of time hanging out with each other. There's probably a golf course that they go to.
There is a golf
You know
course.
what I mean, right? So if you think about it in its long term, it's like this is something that you're going to pin for another conversation, stay in contact with this person, foster this relationship.
Right.
And instead of working through a claim that ultimately is going to cause stress to this person, probably get denied and get you blacklisted in this area, you wait and you farm instead of hunt.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when the storm hits, he tells every one of those people who he's going with and why.
And how
you
good of
turned a
an
$100,000 job into a $2 million neighborhood.
Right.
Right. It's a huge, right? And all the opportunity cost that's lost in the time that you're fighting with the insurance company. You know how daunting and meticulous and time consuming it is? You've done it
It's
a million
horrid.
times. It's like delay, deny, and offend. It's like that they're going to stand firm on this because of how much of a questionable position it is. And you're just going to be spending time spinning your wheels and not finding new accounts.
Right.
Right? It's like that's a seasoned and smart, profit-focused manager's decision at that point. Because the salesperson, yeah, there you go. But the salesperson is never going to think from that perspective.
No.
They have to be guided to that
Yeah.
perspective. And they will. Give them 2 years.
Mhm.
Give them 2 years and they will understand
Yeah.
the negative consequences to going too forward-focused as something that just looks shiny. Yeah.
It's always a fun I told you so for me with some of the guys here when they're newer and, you know, they overzealously fill their pipelines. And then they're like, oh my God, I have so much back end work. I'm like, I told you. Right? I told you. I was like, you know, I left the ball in your court, but I said this one is going to be marginal and it's going to be tough. I told you, right? And they were like, yeah, but it was an opportunity. And I was like, yeah, but how much opportunity have you lost?
Yep.
In the 9 hours you've spent communicating with insurance, meeting them out there 4 times, doing all this other stuff, right? And likely how annoyed is the homeowner?
He sure doesn't want to hear from you anymore.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
So you got denial now and a definite no later.
Yeah. Double denied.
So, well, I think that we got these concepts pretty well put together. But you know, just to reiterate, managing everybody the exact same way as a one-size-fits-all type of strategy is dumb.
Does not work.
Don't do it. It has no riz.
Yeah. No riz. It is riz free.
And forgetting about the importance of profit is a very big fatal error that sends echoes into the organization you work for, and it's really hard to come back from.
Yeah. Well, I learned a new word today. Guyat.
Yacht.
Giat. Sorry, said that wrong. Right off the bat.
Lachlan, guy filming back there, he never puts his face on here. He knows exactly what we're talking about. He's young enough to know what we're talking about. But yeah, we're a bunch of old heads now.
Yeah.
35
Oh
plus.
my God. I'm 35 plus.
Downhill.
35 plus 7 days.
Dude, I'm closer to 70 than I am to 35, and or to 0, and that's a really hard thing to grasp.
I'm a little perturbed that you even put that out there. Oh man.
So, anyways, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in. This episode of Into the Lion's Den. Appreciate the time. Get out there and riz some people up, huh?
Riz them up. Later.
Later.